The late afternoon light streamed through the wide glass panels of the Harrington Bay Hotel in Santa Monica, bathing the grand lobby in a glow that was both luxurious and lonely. Lucas Harrington stood silently beside the bust of his father, the man who founded the hotel empire. But it was Lucas himself who had turned it into a legend. At 55, Lucas was the face on every business magazine, the owner of a chain of luxury hotels stretching from the California coast all the way to Tokyo. And yet, in that moment, amidst the aura of power and success, he froze. A woman's voice began to sing from the ground floor restaurant. It wasn't loud, nor was it trying to draw attention, just someone casually singing while clearing the last tables of the day. But that voice, that melody, those Chinese lyrics, they tore through every mental wall Lucas had spent the last 20 years carefully building. Mo Li Hua, Mo Li Hua, jasmine flower, jasmine flower. That song, that melody, that pronunciation, the tone, the rhythm, every delicate inflection was something only one person could have known, his only daughter, Leah, who had disappeared 20 years ago. He turned his head, his eyes scanning the glittering lights in a panic. And then he saw her, a young woman, around 24 or 25 years old, with neatly tied black hair, softly humming to herself, completely unaware that someone was standing frozen because of her. Lucas's hand went limp. His wineglass slipped and fell onto the carpet without him noticing. His heart pounded wildly. No, it couldn't be. It couldn't possibly be. But on her left wrist, there it was, a faint birthmark in the shape of a tiny heart, no bigger than a candy drop, a birthmark only one person ever had. The birthmark his wife used to kiss every night before putting Leah to sleep. Lucas staggered back, his whole body shattering under the weight of a hope he thought had long been buried. If that's her, if Leah is still alive, then I've spent my whole life lost, because I couldn't find her. Lucas Harrington was the kind of man people spoke of with reverence in their eyes and lowered voices, starting with a single small hotel in San Diego. He had built Harrington Resorts into a 5-star empire stretching across the West Coast, where every detail from the height of the wineglasses to the temperature of the rosewater had to meet the Harrington standard. But no one knew that behind all that perfection was a heart that had been broken for 20 years. His wife, Naoko Mori, was a gentle Japanese pianist, always smiling, who had taught their daughter to sing in 3 languages since she was only 3 years old. Their daughter Leah had a heart-shaped birthmark on her left wrist, and a voice as delicate as morning mist drifting over a lake. But then, one March morning in 2005, just a few hours after he had left home for a meeting, Leah disappeared. No clues, no footprints, no ransom note, only a small jade bracelet engraved with a Chinese character, dropped beside the sofa, the very spot where Leah often sat hugging a pillow while waiting for her mother to finish her practice. That moment shattered every definition Lucas had ever held of family. Naoko broke down and returned to Japan. Lucas cut ties with all relatives. He sold the memory-filled house, buried himself in work and turned his opulent hotels into emotional prisons, trapping himself inside each one. 20 years passed, and he never once hosted a birthday celebration, never smiled in a single press conference, never stepped into the music room where his wife once played piano, but he never stopped searching. Every year, he hired private investigators to reopen the missing person case. He once spent $2 million reconstructing the entire day using AI technology. But everything led to a single word: unknown. Lucas had learned to live with the loss, but he had never accepted it. And deep within him, there still lived a primal fear. What if she was still alive and believed her parents had abandoned her? That was why, when he heard that song, that voice coming from a young woman in a small restaurant in Santa Monica, Lucas Harrington couldn't turn away. He couldn't ignore it. Because if Leah was truly alive, then he would go to the ends of the earth to bring her home. Lucas couldn't recall exactly how he had left the hotel, only that his legs had moved on their own, carrying him back to the tiny restaurant called the Jasmine Place. The name itself felt like a sign. Jasmine the flower Naoko always used to describe their daughter Leah is Mommy's jasmine blossom, small, humble, but long-lasting in fragrance and blooming in places no one expects. There were no flashy ads, no glowing signs. The Jasmine Place sat quietly between a second-hand bookstore and a vintage clothing shop on State Street. Only those truly paying attention would notice it. Lucas walked in. The interior felt as warm as a living room, with red brick walls, hand-painted artwork, and the scent of sautéed garlic blending with the fresh fragrance of jasmine in the corner. A young woman in a simple uniform was wiping down the tables. Her long black hair was tied neatly in a ponytail. She moved gently, as if she knew every brick beneath her feet. Then she began to sing, not for show, but as if pulled from some unconscious habit deep within Mo Li Hua. Mo Li Hua. Lucas was stunned. It wasn't just a traditional Chinese folk song. It was the way she sang it, the ornamentation, the phrasing, the tone, exactly how his wife had taught their daughter to sing it 20 years ago. He immediately raised a hand to his mouth, trying to steady his breath. His heart was pounding out of rhythm. The young woman walked past his table, and in that moment, as her sleeve rolled up while carrying a tray, Lucas saw it, the heart-shaped birthmark on her left wrist, exactly where Leah had hers. His entire body went rigid. The wine glass on the table trembled from the grip of his tightening hand. An older waitress, possibly the manager, walked over. "Can I take your order, sir?" "That girl. What's her name?" She smiled. "Kaya. Kaya Moreno. She's been working here for over 2 years. Sweet girl, quiet, and always singing songs no one knows where she learned them." Lucas swallowed hard. Where did she learn to sing like that? She says the songs just come to her. She's known them since she was a child, like old memories that don't belong to her, but still live somewhere in her heart. Lucas turned away to hide the tears welling in his eyes. It couldn't be coincidence. It couldn't be. And in that very moment, he knew if there was even a 1% chance, he would trade his entire empire to chase it to the end. That night, Lucas didn't return to his hotel. He rented a small room at a quiet seaside resort in Santa Barbara, secluded from the world just to face the one thing he feared most: hope. On his makeshift desk lay an old business card. Its edges were worn, but the name remained clear: Raymond Quintero, private investigator, the man who had investigated Leah's disappearance during the first 3 years, before the family was forced to stop when all leads vanished. Lucas pressed the call button. After just 2 rings, Lucas, "I need you in Santa Barbara." "Tonight." Leah. A brief silence. I'm not certain, but I think I've found her." 2 hours later, Raymond arrived. His hair had grayed significantly, but his eyes were still as sharp as the first day they met. Lucas recounted everything: the restaurant, the voice, the birthmark, the jade bracelet, the name Kaya Moreno. Raymond nodded slightly. "That's enough to start an investigation. But this time, we don't rush. We verify slowly, but thoroughly." The next day, Raymond began gathering records. What they found left both men speechless. Kaya Moreno, born around 2000 to 2001, found wandering alone in a Portland park in March 2006. No documents, no known relatives. Initial diagnosis: trauma-induced memory loss. Only one possession: a small jade bracelet engraved with a Chinese character of unknown meaning. And one final detail that made Lucas's hands tremble as he read: she was found sitting alone, singing in ancient Chinese. Raymond slowly placed the file down on the table. "Do you know the odds of all these details lining up by coincidence?" Lucas said nothing. Less than 1 in a million. They decided to keep watching. Lucas wouldn't contact Kaya directly. He returned to the Jasmine place at different times, always sitting quietly in a corner. Kaya had no idea she was being watched, but every time she sang, Lucas felt as though he were being torn apart. That voice wasn't just music, it was memory. It was the echo of a past life. And then, one day, as Kaya bent down to wipe a table, her sleeve slipped again, revealing something that made Lucas gasp for breath. She was still wearing the jade bracelet. The same bracelet he and Naoko had given Leah for her 4th birthday, engraved with their daughter's Chinese name, Li Ya, meaning spring jasmine. Lucas gripped the edge of his chair. This was no longer a hunch, no longer a fragile hope. This was his daughter, Leah, the little girl who had disappeared 20 years ago, and he, the father who had once been helpless against fate, would not lose her again. Kaya Moreno woke at 5:30 a.m., just like every other day. The cheap alarm clock blared in her tiny studio apartment, with its stained walls and cracked ceiling, a space barely livable, and far from anything one could call home. She pulled off the blanket, her bare feet meeting the cold floor, her eyes drifting toward the one object in the room that made her feel a little less lost. An old jade bracelet, engraved with Chinese characters. Kaya didn't know what the bracelet meant. She didn't remember who had given it to her. All she knew was that it was the only thing she had when the police found her in Portland, a little girl around 6 years old, with no name, no explanation, just quietly sitting on a park bench, singing in a language no one could recognize. Kaya was placed into the foster care system. The name Moreno came from the first caseworker she lived with, a Mexican woman who complained a lot, but once held Kaya through her first nightmare. The name Kaya, according to the file, was a mispronounced version of Leah she kept repeating when officers asked her name. No one paid much attention, but she kept saying Kai, Ya, Kai, Ya. And so it became her name. And so it became her fate. Throughout her childhood, Kaya lived in a system everyone believed to be temporary, but to her, it felt permanent. She was never adopted. Too quiet, too strange, too many questions no one wanted to answer. She learned how to survive on her own, making sandwiches, folding clothes at laundromats, mopping floors at diners. But there was one thing she never had to learn, because it came from somewhere deeper than memory music. Kaya could sing folk songs in Japanese, Chinese, and Korean, even though she had never studied those languages. She once made the music teacher at the group home cry by singing an ancient Chinese lullaby. But when people asked, "Who taught you that song?" she would only shake her head. "I don't know. They live inside me." And so she learned to live with it. No explanations, no boasting, just singing softly, the way someone once sang to her each night. Kaya grew up, moving through different states, working countless temporary jobs, until 2 years ago she came to Santa Barbara. No clear reason, just that something about this place felt like home. She chose to work at the Jasmine place, not because of the pay, but because the scent of jasmine at the shop entrance brought her to tears the first time she walked by. She didn't understand why. She only knew that this place pulled her in like an invisible thread. The manager, Ms. Sharon, once asked her, "Kaya, where did you learn to sing like that?" She answered honestly, "I don't know." Sharon simply gave a soft, melancholic smile. "Maybe from the memories of your soul." Kaya smiled, but said nothing, because some nights, when she lay down to sleep, she could still hear a woman's voice singing lullabies and a man reading Goodnight Moon over and over, like he was afraid she might forget. She didn't know if those were memories or just things her heart had created to fill a space that had never been named. But she knew one thing. Every time she sang Mo Li Hua, her heart ached, not from sadness, but because it remembered. 3 days had passed since the last time Lucas heard that voice. 3 days of returning to the Jasmine place, always sitting in the same corner, always ordering the same dish, always waiting for that girl, Kaya, to appear. She didn't pay much attention to him. For Kaya, customers came and went. It was part of the job. But something about the way he looked at her made it impossible not to notice. Not unfamiliar, not intrusive, but as if he was recognizing something deeply important. On Wednesday afternoon, with the cafe quiet, he set his coffee cup down, stood up slowly, and walked toward the counter. Miss Kaya. She looked up, slightly cautious. Yes, my name is Lucas. I don't mean to intrude, but I have a proposal." She tugged slightly at her sleeve. "A proposal? I'm the owner of the Harrington Hotel chain. I'm developing an internal music program where new talents are trained and perform within our hotel network." She furrowed her brow, unsure how to react. He continued, "I'd like to sponsor you for professional vocal training, coaches, housing, expenses. I'll cover everything. Why me?" Kaya wasn't someone who easily believed in golden opportunities. There had been people before pretending to be producers offering fame, but their eyes never looked like his. There was something about this man's eyes, no desire, only something that felt like a longing to touch a memory. "I'm not great with persuasion," Lucas said, "but your voice holds something no school can teach: depth. And I believe you have the power to reach people's hearts." Kaya looked at the business card he handed her. Lucas Harrington, CEO. She hesitated. "I don't have any credentials, no formal training. I just sing on instinct. That's exactly what makes you special." She suddenly asked, "Are there any strings attached?" "None. If at any point you don't want to continue, you're free to walk away." Lucas paused for a beat. Then he pulled out another business card, this one for Raymond Quintero, private investigator. "If you're unsure about me or my intentions, call him. He'll verify who I am." Kaya took both cards, visibly overwhelmed. No one in her life had ever handed her something like this, an unconditional trust. All she knew was this: the way he spoke about music, it felt like he had touched something inside her that she had no words for. That night, Kaya sat alone in her tiny room, staring at the two business cards on the table beside her jade bracelet. Outside the window was the ocean, still, deep, endless, like the questions in her heart. Could this be an opportunity, or just another trap dressed in kindness? She gently touched the surface of the bracelet, and for the first time in a very long while, she whispered, "If Mum were still alive, she'd want me to go, wouldn't she?" 3 days after that fateful conversation, Kaya called Raymond Quintero. The call was brief, just to confirm that Lucas Harrington was real. Had a clear record, no criminal history, no scandals. But the voice on the other end, raspy, deep, deliberate, caught her attention for one reason. "You're the one who sings at the Jasmine Place, aren't you?" "Yes." "How do you know that?" "Because your voice might change an entire family." That sentence echoed in Kaya's mind as she finally accepted the offer. A week later, she moved into Lucas's beachside villa in Malibu, a home with a music room, professional vocal coaches, and something far stranger, a feeling of familiarity. The moment she stepped into the music room, Kaya froze. The grand piano at the center of the space, sunlight filtering through the skylight onto the ivory keys, the scent of polished wood, the way the room resonated when she took a deep breath. It all felt like she had been there before. Lucas followed behind her, keeping his distance, silently observing her every move. Kaya walked toward the piano, her hand settled on middle C like muscle memory, and then, without being prompted, She began to hum Mo Li Hua, Mo Li Hua. Her voice soared through the room. Lucas clenched his hand tightly on the doorframe, his expression unreadable, but his eyes shimmered. Because every trill, every vibration in her tone was exactly how his wife had taught Leah to sing. When the song ended, Kaya lifted her head, a little embarrassed. I don't know why I sang that. It just came out, like it was waiting inside me. Lucas said nothing. He walked slowly to a drawer, pulled out a small item carefully wrapped in velvet, a faded old photograph. He didn't hand it to her, just placed it on the piano. She leaned forward to look. A little girl, around 4 years old, with black hair in pigtails, sitting at a piano with her Asian mother behind her, a heart-shaped birthmark visible on her wrist. Kaya stared. This is Leah, my daughter. The air stood still. Kaya swallowed hard. She didn't dare ask more. But that night, in the elegant guest room overlooking the ocean, she dreamed. Not a normal dream. A memory. A woman singing her to sleep in Japanese. A man lifting her onto a sofa and reading Goodnight Moon over and over until she drifted off. A gentle hand braiding her hair every morning. She woke up with a jolt, her heart pounding. She picked up the jade bracelet, her hand trembling for the first time since she was a child, and whispered, "It's real. It's memory." The next morning, Lucas quietly handed Raymond a sealed bag. It held the glass Kaya had used the day before. Raymond gave a firm nod. "That's enough for a DNA test." Lucas didn't say a word. He just nodded slightly, like a father bracing himself to hear a familiar voice again after 20 years of silence. 2 days later, Lucas's phone rang at 9:47 a.m. It was Raymond. His voice was hoarse, worn from a sleepless night. "Lucas, you should sit down. Tell me. 99.7%. The DNA confirms it, Kaya, is Leah." A moment of silence, then the sound of rapid, shallow breaths. Lucas collapsed into his chair, his hand trembling as he gripped the edge of the table. Though his heart had suspected, his eyes had seen, and his soul had heard, it wasn't until the cold precision of numbers confirmed it that he finally allowed himself to believe. She had come home. Raymond hesitated. "When do you plan to tell her?" "I don't know." Lucas looked out toward the backyard, where Kaya sat by the grand piano, pressing each key as if she were awakening pieces of her soul. She's remembering. Little by little. Raymond's voice softened. Maybe. It's time she knew. That evening, Lucas invited Kaya to dinner on the rooftop terrace. A simple meal, no wine, no candles, just the sound of the ocean and the stillness of the air. After finishing her main course, Kaya set down her fork and knife and looked up at him. "Can I ask you something? Personal?" "Of course. You had a daughter, didn't you?" Lucas went silent. "Yes. She went missing." "That's right. How old was she when she disappeared? Or if she were alive today, she'd be my age." Lucas didn't respond. His eyes shimmered. Kaya gripped her water glass, her voice trembling. "I've been dreaming things. So real, it's frightening. Rooms, a man reading stories, a woman, Asian, teaching me how to pronounce every Chinese word." She paused, then asked directly, "Do you believe I'm—" Leah Lucas took a deep breath. He placed his hand on the table, slow but steady. "Kaya, I know you are my daughter. You believe it with everything in me. A father's instinct, the memories, your voice, the birthmark, the bracelet." He paused for a moment, then added, "And the DNA test." Kaya looked like she'd been thrown back in her chair. "You tested my DNA. I'm sorry. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. I couldn't bear to give you hope. If you weren't Leah—" For the first time, he referred to himself as Dad and didn't even realize it. Kaya stood up and turned away, tears falling in hot, silent drops. Silence. Only the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. Then she turned back. Her voice was choked, but firm. "If I am Leah, then why did you lose me? Because I didn't protect you," Lucas said. He stood and moved closer, eyes pleading. "But I've searched for you for 20 years, and I would still be searching. If I hadn't heard you sing that night." Kaya broke into tears. She rushed into his arms, not needing a reason, not needing an explanation. Only one truth mattered in that moment. She was no longer an orphan. He was no longer a father without his child. They were father and daughter, once, and now, forever. The next morning, just as sunlight tiptoed through the music room window, Raymond knocked on Lucas's office door, his face heavy. In his hand was a thick folder, labeled "Confidential, Internal Lead Suspect A.H." Lucas set his coffee down, brow furrowed. "You found something?" Raymond nodded slightly, tension plain in his eyes. "We always believed it was a random abduction. Wasn't it?" "No." He opened the folder and flipped to a page with a bolded name, Amy Harrington, biological sister of Lucas Harrington. Lucas froze. Raymond pressed on before he could react. "She used to work as a coordinator at the preschool where Leah attended, had access to schedules, pick-up times, transportation details. Amy couldn't have. I traced financial activity from 2005. There were suspicious transfers from a secondary account under Amy's control to a shell company in Riverside County, later exposed as a front for a human trafficking ring." Lucas leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. Why Raymond sat down across from him, voice low and steady, jealousy, prejudice. "She never accepted your marriage to an Asian woman, and even more, she couldn't stand that a biracial child would be loved, would inherit the Harrington name," Lucas whispered, barely audible. "She betrayed her own niece. At first, Amy thought it would just be a lesson for you, a quick ransom scheme, a scare big enough to wreck your marriage. But she had no idea the people she worked with were part of an interstate trafficking operation. And after things got out of control, the ring was taken down. Leah escaped. Amy believed her niece had died, and she lived for 20 years behind a mask, until she saw Kaya in the news, standing beside you. Lucas buried his face in his hands. He had spent his whole life suspecting strangers, never imagining that the traitor carried the Harrington name, and once called his daughter her beloved niece. That evening, in the music room, Kaya was rehearsing with her vocal coach when Lucas approached, his eyes heavy with something difficult to say. "There's something I need to tell you." She took off her headphones and tilted her head slightly. Lucas sat down slowly beside the piano and told her every word, every truth, no hiding, no excuses. When he said the name Amy, Kaya paused. "She's your biological sister?" "Yes, she orchestrated the kidnapping." Lucas nodded. "And I only learned that today. I've already handed everything over to the police." Kaya didn't say anything. Her fists clenched. Her eyes darkened, not with fear, but with a deeper pain rising to the surface. The person who stole her childhood was family. She had grown up in grief, in confusion about who she was, all because of a woman who hated her mother for the color of her skin. After a long pause, Kaya spoke, her voice steady, though thick with emotion. "I want to see her." Lucas froze. "What I want? To look her in the eyes, to ask her, did she ever feel regret?" He was about to object, but then he looked into his daughter's eyes, and they were no longer the eyes of a lost girl. They were the eyes of a woman who had reclaimed her name and was now demanding justice for a childhood stolen from her. That evening, at the Harrington Bay Hotel, Kaya's debut performance, presented as a special sponsored artist by Lucas Harrington, was held on the open-air rooftop, swept with ocean breeze. The entire Los Angeles press scene was their music producers, record label reps, even a Hollywood star researching her next role. Kaya stepped onto the stage in a simple, deep blue gown, the lights soft and warm. She smiled gently. "Tonight, I'd like to begin with a song no one ever taught me, but somehow I've known it since before I even knew my own name." And then Molly Hua filled the air, as soft as a first breath, every note rising like a memory being lifted out of sleep. In the audience, Lucas stood motionless, and not far from him, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat sat in the darkest corner of the rooftop, eyes fixed on Kaya Amy Harrington. The performance ended in a thunderous standing ovation. Kaya bowed, then quietly slipped off stage, heading to the upper level where the infinity pool shimmered in silence, guarded only by a few staff. She needed air and a moment to steady her breath. But what she didn't expect was that the one waiting for her up there wasn't her father. It wasn't Raymond. It was her. "You sang beautifully." Amy spoke first. Kaya jolted. "Who are you?" "I'm the person who caused the greatest pain in your life." Kaya stepped back half a pace. The glow from the pool shimmered across the woman's face, caked in makeup, but unable to hide the trembling at the corners of her lips. "Lily," Amy said, using her real name for the first time. "I was wrong. From beginning to end. Kaya clenched her fists. You weren't wrong. You were cruel. You knew exactly what you were doing. I just thought, if your mother disappeared from the Harrington family, everything would go back to the way it was. And the cost was a child ripped away, nameless, rootless, raised like a shadow. You want forgiveness for that? Amy pulled an envelope from her purse. This is my confession letter. I was going to hand it to the police before I did something I can't take back. Her voice wavered. But when I saw you sing, I knew I had lost. Because you're still alive, and you're more beautiful than any revenge I ever imagined. Kaya didn't take the envelope. She only stared into the eyes of the woman who once shared the same last name as her father. Do you know, all I ever wanted was something that felt impossible. That one day someone would say to me, "You are loved." But you took that from me. You didn't just break my family, you broke me. At that very moment, the sound of footsteps echoed. Lucas and Raymond rushed onto the rooftop. Seeing Amy, Lucas slowed his pace. Amy, let it go. It's over. Amy turned. Her eyes were filled with tears, but something dangerous flickered in them. No, Lucas. It's only just begun. You got your daughter back. You have your spotlight. And me. What do I have? Raymond signaled to the security guards, but Kaya raised her hand to stop them. No one touches her. She stepped closer to Amy. Though her eyes still burned with anger, her voice had softened. I won't let you take anything else from me. Not even this moment. Kaya turned to look at Lucas standing at a distance and spoke loud enough for the entire rooftop to hear Dad. I'm still here, and I'll live the life Mum dreamed for me, because I am Leah Harrington, and no one can take that away from me anymore. Lucas's eyes welled with tears. Amy collapsed, pulled the envelope from her purse, and placed it on the edge of the pool before burying her face in her hands. I'm sorry. The police arrived. Amy was taken into custody without resistance. Lucas stepped forward and pulled Kaya into his arms as she began to tremble in shock. She cried, but this time, not from pain, from the relief of finally speaking the truth in her own voice. It seemed the rooftop confrontation had ended in tears and apologies. But tragedy, like any wound that hasn't fully stopped bleeding, always finds its way back. 2 weeks later, when the media exposed the full story of Amy Harrington, she was officially charged with multiple crimes aiding and abetting kidnapping, concealing identity, and obstruction of criminal investigation. The press called it the most shocking family betrayal in the hotel industry this decade. Lucas stayed silent. Kaya, or rather, Leah, kept her distance from the media. They chose to focus on one thing: music, as a bridge, as healing, as a new rhythm for an old heart. That evening, during the final rehearsal for a charity concert benefiting missing children, Kaya performed the song that had changed everything, Morli Hua. As the piano played, she sang not with fear, not with doubt, but with the freedom of someone who had finally reclaimed herself. But in that moment, from the audience, Lucas leaned forward, his face turned pale. His hands shook, one clutching his chest, the other bracing against the chair. The music stopped. Kaya rushed from the stage. Dad Lucas looked at her, his vision already fading, but a soft smile still on his face. "Leah, you came back. Don't say that. You're going to be okay. We have so much left to do." She screamed for help, called for an ambulance. The concert hall erupted in panic. But in the midst of the pain, Lucas reached up to gently touch her cheek. "You sang, just like your mother always dreamed, and I finally got to hear it." His voice weakened, then faded completely. Lucas Harrington passed away from a heart attack on the very night his daughter sang on stage for the first time under her true name. The entire hotel industry observed a day of mourning. The press called him the father who spent 20 years searching for his child and died in the most complete dream imaginable. 3 months later, Kaya, now officially known again as Leah Harrington, hosted a memorial for her father at the hotel where it all began. She stood beside a plaque etched with the words, "Lucas Harrington, beloved father, unshaken soul," and she sang. No microphone, no orchestra, only her voice, her memory, and her tears blending with the ocean breeze that night. 6 months after Lucas Harrington's passing, a special ceremony was held at St. Helena Church, titled Voices of the Lost, Nungjong Hat Trove. On stage, 30 children rescued from cases of abduction, trafficking, and abuse sang lullabies in multiple languages in perfect unison. Leading them was Leah Harrington, the founder of the Lucas and Leah Foundation for Missing Children and their families. Each child in the choir had once lived through silence, through being lost just like Leah had years ago. Now they sang not just to perform, but to remind the world we were once forgotten, but now we are heard. After the performance, a 3-year-old girl named Maria, who had been rescued after 18 months of illegal captivity, walked onto the stage holding a small bouquet of white jasmine. She pressed the bouquet into Leah's hands and whispered in Spanish, "Para el papá que me trajo a casa," for the father who brought me home. Leah pulled the little girl into her arms. She didn't have time to wipe away her tears before whispering back, "And for the father who never stopped looking for me." 2 weeks later, on a quiet hillside in Malibu where Lucas once lived, a ribbon-cutting ceremony was held for the opening of the Harrington House of Musical Healing, an open sanctuary where children who had endured trauma could heal through instruments, through song, and through people who listened without judgment. Naoko, Leah's mother, returned from Japan to serve as musical director. She often said, "I lost my husband, but I found my daughter, and I found my faith again." That music can save a lost soul. Every week, Leah teaches a small class at the center not to create stars, but to help children voice the pain they cannot yet speak. On her wrist, she still wears the old jade bracelet. On the classroom wall hangs a photo of Lucas, smiling, and beneath it, engraved in bold letters, "He listened, so we were found. We were lost, but we were not forgotten. The story of Leah Harrington is not a miracle. It is proof of a simple truth, one rarely spoken aloud, that sometimes love doesn't have to be found with logic. It only needs to be believed in with the heart. And if you are lost or searching for someone who once meant the world to you, remember this. The voice you thought had gone silent may still be singing somewhere, just waiting for you to listen. There are searches that last a lifetime, not because we don't know the way, but because the person we seek has been hidden in our own memory. And yet, with a single melody, a voice, a glance, that entire lost world can come home again. And when it does, don't hesitate to call it by the most beautiful word there is: family.